All right, just for sake of time and as people are filing in, we'll begin our February town hall here with Vermont Farm Bureau. Uh, Excited for this one. I know a lot of folks said they were going to be unable to make it, and so we're going to obviously record this and share this later. But we are joined by Andrew Walmsley, who is the Senior Director of Governmental Affairs for American Farm Bureau Federation. For those who are able to join us at our annual meeting back in November, Andrew joined us and did some presenting there. And we wanted to have him back as his priority list is long, but one of them is, of course, the Farm Bill. And so he has a lot of great information. He's our point person when either myself or Joe have questions. So without further ado, Andrew, thank you first of all for joining us and give us what we need to know about the wonderful Farm Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for allowing me to join you this evening. And just to make sure I'm good on time, you want me to wrap up 25 minutes for questions and the like, right?
That'd be
Perfect. All
great.
right. Well, and I'm going to share some slides to keep myself on track, because if not, I'll start wondering and telling all types of Washington, D.C. stories that may or may not be appropriate. So everybody seeing my slides? Looking good? Give me a thumbs up. All right, we're good. So happy, feel free to jump in if you've got any questions, concerns, we can have a conversation, but I can run through these slides pretty quick and leave time for us to talk through some of the issues. And I'm very happy to share these slides. So if you don't want to have to take pictures or you're worried about getting them later, I will make sure the Vermont Farm Bureau team has them if you have a desire for them. There's plenty of things we can talk about, but one that I think we're going to focus on tonight is just talking about Farm Bill and where we're at as a farm economy, and you know what are our outlooks on hopefully getting a Farm Bill done before the end of this year. As you recall, the last time we did a Farm Bill was in 2018, the Agricultural Improvement Act. Typically, we do a Farm Bill every 5 years. So current law expires at the end of the fiscal year of the federal government, which is the end of September. So we either need to pass a Farm Bill or work on an extension before October 1st. And I will say today that we will not have a Farm Bill passed by October 1st. We'll probably need a short-term extension, but I definitely am optimistic that we could get a Farm Bill done before the end of this year. When you look at all the challenges that are out there, not just facing consumers, which generally we're all facing, right, from that perspective of inflationary pressures, higher food costs, higher energy prices. That's even more challenging on the farm, right? When you look at all of our production expenses, particularly when you look at the need for affordable energy and the run-ups we've seen in diesel prices. We've seen a huge run-up, actually a record 1 month increase back last April in input cost, over 20% in 1 month. You can see that out of some of the latest numbers from USDA on net farm income and production expenses. Thankfully for a lot of producers and a lot of commodities, we saw increased commodity prices last year that helped negate some of that volatility and higher production expenses. We also had record high production expenses last year, and just hot off the presses from yesterday out of USDA, they have their first projections for this upcoming year. You can see there the red line at the bottom is an increase of another 4% of record expected production expenses, and overall net farm income is expected to drop by roughly 16%. So while we've had higher commodity prices, again, to kind of cushion some of this blow, I think many of y'all who've maybe lived through times like this will recognize that our commodity prices tend to fall much quicker than a lot of our input costs. And so that's a little bit of what USDA is projecting here. So just something to keep in mind as we are messaging and educating lawmakers on some of the challenges facing agriculture. Another thing to kind of point out here, and some of these slides will look familiar to y'all that we're at the annual meeting in Vermont. I'm kind of a wind-up monkey. I only know so many tricks, but hopefully it's helpful information. I try to keep it updated. But another perspective here is just some of the unprecedented spending, not just generally that the federal government has undergone the last few years, but that has been specific to farmers, ranchers, and rural America. And you can take that back to the trade war with China. which necessitated the need for market facilitation payments as farmers were harmed in that as markets closed overnight in concerns to the Chinese market and retaliatory tariffs. And then you see that huge influx of government spending there in 2020, which was obviously in reaction to markets closing overnight as governments shut down the economy in response to the pandemic. And then you have some additional ad hoc disaster program payments since then. I point all this out is that these dollars are being spent outside of what's called the baseline of the Farm Bill. The baseline of the Farm Bill is basically the projected amount of dollars that the Congressional Budget Office gives to the House and Senate Agriculture Committees to utilize in writing the next Farm Bill. So this spending is not being captured anywhere to where we can reutilize that or count that towards a farm bill. And so as we've seen, about 60% of assistance to rural America is outside of the Farm Bill over the last few years. Yes, we've lived through a flock of black swan events and really unprecedented challenges, but I think it begs the question as we go into this Farm Bill debate, do farmers and ranchers have all the risk management tools they need to continue to kind of ride this roller coaster of volatility? Just a refresher on what's in a farm bill and why does it matter to all the things I'm mentioning. It's one of those big omnibus pieces of legislation that touches almost all the topics I've talked about and really does have an impact on every American's life. Clearly, from an agricultural standpoint, generally, our two biggest priorities as an organization is around the Title I commodity title, which is a lot of your risk management programs, and Title 11, which is the crop insurance program. We also have a forestry and horticulture title. Energy, when we talk about high energy costs, how do we make investments and help farmers become more efficient or reduce energy costs? Those are the purpose of a lot of those programs. Forestry title on helping us manage our lands. You've got rural development, which is key to the quality of rural life. When we talk about in that title, a lot about broadband. I think there's a lot of different conversations as well about whatever infrastructure needs we need in our rural communities, particularly as we're seeing post-pandemic shifts of people being able to work from home and work maybe in more rural areas, people not having to leave the farm and being able to stay home. What then infrastructure needs do we need to have? Obviously, broadband and connectivity is part of that, but what about rural childcare? What about rural health? Those are some of the things that I think will be discussed as we go through this Farm Bill. Credit, access to credit, keeping up with those inflationary pressures that we're seeing will be something that's examined. You've got the trade title, which is critically important when you think about food for peace. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia and the real reality these days of food insecurity for many people around the world. That trade title is critically important. Do we have the correct investments there as a leading country in productivity and efficiencies to be able to provide that assistance that's desperately needed? And then you've got the conservation title, where we do a lot of great work. I'll dive a little bit deeper into that. And then there's a little bit of the nutrition piece that could make it a little unwieldy to get a farm bill done. But nutrition being one of those pieces of the bill that takes up most of the spending and really does impact a lot of Americans, not in just urban areas, but rural areas as well. Just setting the stage politically on who some of the players are in this. We are now past the election. We are seeing where the dust has settled. We had the House of Representatives flip from Democratic control to Republican control, and we have some new faces and some new seats. In the Senate, you have the longtime chairwoman from Michigan, Debbie Stabenow. I'm not calling her old. She's just seasoned. She's just done a few of these farm bills as either chair or ranking member. But you see, she comes from Michigan. And some of her priorities. The big piece here is that she just recently announced that she is not seeking re-election in 2024. So I think there's a real desire for her to do one more farm bill, to kind of leave her policy legacy in one last piece of legislation when it comes to farm bills. You got John Bozeman from Arkansas. He's new as the ranking member for a farm bill. He's been around ag for a while, a good senator. He takes over for the Republicans from Pat Roberts, who was a longtime farmhand from Kansas, wrote farm bills in the House and Senate as chair and ranking member. And then you got Mr. Thompson from Pennsylvania. He takes over for Mike Conaway, who did not seek re-election. And then new for Democrats is Mr. Scott. as the ranking member. He takes over for Colin Peterson, who lost his reelection back in 2020. So some of the leadership of the committee itself are new to doing a farm bill in these roles. Not saying they don't understand foreign policy, but just some of those dynamics are key to understanding. The biggest piece, however, and you have some new faces from a Vermont perspective, or at least some shifting of seats, but kind of fits into this category, is that we have 260 lawmakers that were not in Congress, either the House or Senate, when we wrote the 2018 Farm Bill. So there is a huge effort that needs to take place, and this is a critically important role you can play as a Vermont Farm Bureau member, is to educate your elected representatives on the importance of farm policy, the importance of Farm Bill, the challenges you're facing as an agricultural producer. This is your opportunity to make a difference. Politics and policymaking is a full contact sport. You have to be engaged. There's a terrible cliche that's overused in Washington that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so it's really critical to be educating all of our members of Congress on the challenges we're seeing and potentially some of the solutions we find through a farm bill. In addition, we have new leadership when it comes to the House of Representatives and Speaker. I will say this is probably the first time in my lifetime that we actually have a Republican speaker that wants to get a farm bill done. Speaker Boehner was notorious for not wanting to do farm policy. Kevin McCarthy served on the House Ag Committee when he first came to Congress. He has a fairly ag district in California. Having conversations with committee staff, the Speaker's office will say, well, we're going to put you on the floor in June. I mean, he's already talking about putting a farm bill on the floor. And they say, well, that's a little too quick, but we want to be right there, right in that same kind of time frame, lining up. Maybe after we learn some lessons over the debt ceiling fight. So there's a desire there for the Speaker to put something on the floor. I think is helpful. You've got Mr. Scalise, who is the majority leader from Louisiana, wants to get a farm bill done. Tom Emmer comes from Minnesota. He's the whip. He wants to get a farm bill done. So there's definitely a dynamic there that I think provides optimism of hopefully getting a farm bill done. The other fact, and we all watched, maybe we didn't all, y'all have much better things to do than us policy junkies, but the speaker battle, right? And just the chaos that ensued there. I think I'd be a little more concerned if Republicans had a 20-vote swing because they could play a much more partisan game. The fact that they really only have a handful of votes will force Mr. Thompson and Leader McCarthy, if they truly desire, they want to show the American people they can govern and want to move a farm bill forward, they'll have to be bipartisan from the beginning. So I think that margin so tight actually bodes well for getting a farm bill done, because we traditionally are always bipartisan. Whenever we have found success, it's been bipartisan. And oh, by the way, we still have to get 60 votes through the Senate to get a farm bill across the finish line as well. Here's this piece about nutrition I mentioned. This does complicate things a little bit, where you have a Congress, a House that claims to be fiscally conservative, which is a whole nother debate for Republicans. If that's actually true, it just depends on the day and maybe the program. But this will make it tough for a debate. When you look at the projection over 10 years for Farm Bill, this could be the first ever $1 trillion farm bill. And that's attributable to just one program, and that's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which was formerly known as food stamps, so SNAP. This is something that Democrats are going to protect and don't want to see any changes to. I think there's some Republicans that would love to gut the program, but I think Mr. Thompson, they had an organizational hearing today for the House Ag Committee, had some really good statements talking about, we're not going to do anything that harms SNAP. There's a lot of rabble-rousers in the House that don't understand the program, and if they wanted to make meaningful change, they should have joined the House Ag Committee. So he really put a marker down today, I think, again, that kind of bodes well for the possibility of moving a farm bill forward. Not saying we don't need to evaluate SNAP. I mean, that's a lot of money, right? I mean, there needs to make sure that it's being utilized to its fullest potential, that those are taxpayer resources. But just to go out and go after it by one party will not bode well. And I don't think we'll necessarily see that. We'll see amendments, and that'll be part of the process. But I think from a leadership and those guiding this bill forward, they will fend off those attacks. I mentioned conservation. This will be another kind of key piece of the debate. Before the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law, many folks would argue that the 2018 bill was the most climate-friendly bill to be enacted in the law. When you look at the conservation title and those conservation programs, Over 140 million acres in this country is under one of those programs. That's larger than the states of New York and California combined. That doesn't count state initiatives or private partnerships or private initiatives. So really key critical piece of our stewardship story, comes through the Farm Bill. This is a voluntary incentive-based program, something that we support, that as long as it recognizes the economic viability of producers, it provides that flexibility for the diversity of American agriculture. And we're going to continue to see climate discussed in this space. And we're very comfortable with that from a Farm Bureau perspective in Title II, as long as we don't lose sight of the other resource concerns that we must manage as farmers and ranchers. We can't lose sight of our water quality, quantity, wildlife habitat, soil health, all those things that are still important. But we truly believe we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And so welcome that debate. We have a great story to tell in ag. I could go in through a bunch of climate slides. A lot of that's on our website. Just out of time, I will not do that this evening. But I just will say that this is the foundation we have to continue to build upon. We are very fortunate in this country that food is abundant enough, and even outside of more recent pressures, food is affordable enough, and most consumers are affluent enough that they can dictate how their food is grown. That's a beautiful thing. That provides choice for consumers, and that provides choice for you as farmers and ranchers. But we can't go backwards. We need to continue to sustainably intensify, because we have that moral imperative to feed 9.5 billion people in the next couple of decades. And so if we're going to be able to bring everyone to the table, we have to have all those options. And so I think the investments we've had in ag research, for in roughly 2 generations, we've now increased our agricultural output. For every one we put in, we get about 3 out. That's not from a regulation or a mandate. That's investment in research, extension, the investments you've made on your farms, the improved efficiencies, the improved genetics in our herds and our plants and our seeds. It's all of those things coming together that we must continue to build upon. I don't know if we have any livestock producers, but there's some that I like to call conflict entrepreneurs that really like to vilify our livestock producers. I would argue from a greenhouse gas perspective, they're maybe not as big a concern as some might make. It's less than 3% of emissions. Not saying we're perfect, but there's always room for improvement. But the good thing is we're heading in the right direction. When you look in the last 30 years, our pork production's up about 80%, while our per unit emissions are down almost 20. Beef production's up almost 20%, while per unit emissions are down 8. And then milk production's up almost 50%, while per unit emissions are down about 25%. So it's that efficiencies that are critically important that we continue to build upon, that allows multiple production practices and options for producers and consumers. We want to have that choice protected while also providing the environmental benefits that are expected of us. It's not just what we do on the farm as far as production. It's all the things we support when it comes to renewable energy, solar, wind, our utilization of biofuels. You're going to continue to see growth in the renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuels. Those are going to be especially needed in the near term, particularly for heavy duty vehicles. There's definitely going to be a push towards electrification, but we just don't want to lose sight of the real emissions reductions we're seeing with the utilization of biofuels going forward. I mentioned just real quick that I'm a big proponent of working in coalitions, because anytime you give a lawmaker a choice, they will disappoint you. And so the more voices you can have coming together to push in one direction, you typically find success. And we have done that with the Food and Agriculture Climate Alliance, really an unprecedented alliance that came together to talk climate policy and agriculture. We ultimately put out 40 different policy recommendations. Some of those have been enacted into law, from Growing Climate Solutions Act to the pilot projects for climate smart agriculture, to a bunch of appropriation pieces that have been enacted. That's all through FACA, which grew from Farm Bureau and EDF having a conversation to over 80 groups now. We've kept together through the Farm Bill, and we are going to be putting out Farm Bill recommendations in the next 2 weeks. So you'll see more from a climate perspective, how that can kind of intertwine into a Farm Bill. All again for FACA is in line with Farm Bureau policy. So we are working with additional stakeholders carrying Farm Bureau policy forward on the Hill that takes causes lawmakers to stop and kind of take notice to this many different voices coming together and pushing in one direction. You can find all of this on the website. It'll be updated soon at climatealliance.com. You might be saying, I thought we were talking farm bill and now this guy's talking a lot about climate. Well, the other big piece of this puzzle comes out of the Inflation Reduction Act. The IRA was a budget reconciliation measure that passed last year. When you do reconciliation, it's a very arcane budget piece to get around the filibuster in the Senate. So you usually have to get 60 votes in the Senate. Through reconciliation, you only need 50+1, simple majority. It ends up being very partisan, and it's also limiting in what you can do on policy. It has to be a revenue raiser or spender. It's a budget impact. So there was about $40 billion for agriculture in the IRA. Most of that went to farm bill programs. About 18 billion went to 4 conservation, working lands conservation programs. You can see on here that after 2026, there's kind of a conservation cliff. And CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, again, has projected that USDA will not be able to spend the dollars on how they are currently allocated in that time frame. So in theory, through the Farm Bill, we should be able to go out and repurpose those dollars and utilize it for baseline. We could then utilize that for other programs in the Farm Bill. The reality, the political reality is Senator Stabenow will not let that happen. As far as going to other programs, she'll want to put a finer point on on conservation spending, or maybe some into ag research. But these dollars are out there. I think she'll have a desire to capture some of those because she was limited in the policy prescriptions. And I think Republicans will be open to having this conversation, particularly if it's mostly around the conservation title, since they were completely cut out of the reconciliation process because it was so partisan. So this is just another piece to keep an eye on. Again, for Farm Bureau, we are happy to have a conversation around climate and conservation in Title II. We don't want to see that climatized throughout the whole Farm Bill. Commodity programs, risk measurement programs are there for a reason. Crop insurance is there for a reason. But we're happy to have a conversation around conservation programs. So here are some of our high-level priorities. You can go to our website, fb.org/farm bill, to see the more detailed list. But high level, our delegates voted in Puerto Rico back in January to support an increase in baseline from farm program spending. All those things we laid out, all those challenges, we need to better invest in our rural communities and make sure we have the appropriate risk management tools for farmers and ranchers. We need to keep farm programs and nutrition together. That's from a food security and national security standpoint, farm to fork strategy. And the political reality is it takes that coalition to get a bill done. The third point is basically just to keep Congress in shape. If they don't do anything, we will revert back to permanent law, which is some of the original farm bills, which would really create havocs in markets and increase food prices. So that's more of, hey, Congress, you can't just let a farm bill expire. You need to either extend or write a new one. Our priorities are, again, around federal crop insurance and risk management tools. And then finally, one thing that's kind of new to this kind of piece of our priority list is recognizing the challenges we've had at USDA from a staffing standpoint, whether that's at the Farm Service Agency, whether it's at NRCS with all these new dollars, if we have the technical assistance to get them into the ground and managed. And then even in looking at crop insurance and building out new products, does the Risk Management Agency have all the tools they need? So that's a question that we're going to continue to pose to the committee, because no matter how much programmatic funding might be available, if there's no one there to help a farmer work through it, what good does it do? It's kind of our point. And so higher prioritizing that. Just to wrap up here, it is a winding road to get a farm bill done. This is just recent history. You know, there's a lot of starts and stops. In '96, the first farm bill failed in committee. '02 was an enigma where it was passed a year early. The '08 farm bill was vetoed by George W. Bush twice and overridden by Congress twice. Really not going to talk about the 14 farm bill since it was supposed to be the 12th. And then the 18 farm bill was the first farm bill I got to work on as the staff lead. We initially failed on the House floor. I remember like it was yesterday. It was my daughter's birthday. It was not a happy birthday for me, the poor child. But at the end of the day, we still were able to get the farm bill across the finish line and sign into law before Christmas. First time since 1990 that we got a farm bill done in the same year it was introduced. So it's definitely possible. And I definitely think there's a probability we could do that this year if everybody's engaged. One last plug I'll put in here. This is our market intel service, free service from AFBF. We have a great team of economists. They'll be doing several title by title series on the farm bill that you can go dig deeper on any of the points I kind of made this evening. They also have the latest market updates out of USDA as different reports come out, that net farm income on should be posting tomorrow morning with the data just coming out. We've got a whole primer on carbon markets, SEC climate rules, all kinds of good stuff up there. We won't bombard your inbox. Again, free and written in a way with numbers and graphs that even a lobby jockey like myself can comprehend and sometime explain it to other people. So with that, President Tisber, I will stop. This is my contact information. If y'all ever need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. That is my cell phone. So please don't abuse it. Put it on the mirror at Howl at the Moon at 1 a.m. and encourage the bar to call me. But otherwise, happy to answer any questions that y'all might have. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Well, first off, Andrew, thank you again so much for joining us. I know a few questions had come in, but I do know we have some time here. So if anyone on the call does wish to ask a question of Andrew, please feel free at this time. You can unmute yourself and present that question. And if not, we'll wrap up here in a couple minutes. All right. Let me also double check. Yeah. There's Paul. I believe you had a question, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, please go right ahead.
What are the chances of any of those recommendations for federal marketing order modernization even seeing the light of day in this farm bill?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, and I didn't even get into the work we've been working on as far as a dairy working group, bringing together the different parts of the country. We had our big dairy summit back earlier this year. I know a lot of that we're trying to achieve working with our partners in the industry, potentially through FMMO with USDA, Federal Milk Marketing Order. But there are going to be some provisions to improve dairy through the Farm Bill. And so I think there is a very good chance that's clearly under the commodity title to potentially make some tweaks there. And that's something we'll definitely be working on.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
All right. And then also to add, of course, we do record these, so we'll be sharing this out. But Andrew did mention that the slides that were used, as well as some other items, have been given to us, and we will be distributing those as well. So did want to make sure that that was clear, that we do have the slides, and thank you again for those. And I believe we have the ones from annual meeting that had a few Vermont specific related statistics and data. So again, appreciate for that. And then President Tisber, I saw you raise your hand. Is there something you'd like to share?
I did. So Andrew, we talk a lot from presidents around the country about, what are the biggest obstacles in this farm bill to try to bring it in over the next year or 6 or 8 months, or whatever we have to do here. With the nutrition, you're hearing a lot of talk about nutrition, wanting to spend more on nutrition, SNAP part of it. But what are the things that you guys are seeing that is really big obstacles for the farm bill to try to get this across for the farmer and rancher perspective?
I truly am optimistic that we can get this done. I mean, President Duvall, Zippy Duvall, President of American Farm Bureau, 2 weeks ago went and sat with all four corners of the House and Senate Ag committees, and every one of them are committed to trying to get a bill done. Congress is generally dysfunctional, but again, there's a lot we accomplished last Congress, from infrastructure bill, Growing Climate Solutions Act, Ocean Shipping Reform Act, Water Resources Development Act. I'm trying to think what else, omnibus with disaster assistance. I mean, there is so much that gets done for agriculture every Congress that I don't know if people fully appreciate, and the fact that the Farm Bill is a much bigger picture. There's that much more of a microscope on it. So I there's always a pathway forward. I think there's Republicans need to show that they can govern, and I think you not to be political, but the shifting dynamics of rural America for a lot of places tend to be a lot more Republican these days. And so being able to bring something home to those constituencies, I think, are going to be important. I think the biggest complicating factor, to get to your actual question, and as you'll notice, I've been in Washington too long, I'll give you a 2-minute response. That's just, I could give you two words, is the debt limit. I think there's a lot of uncertainty what happens there, and that's going to be outside of the controls of the ag committees. So, if we see a major cut to farm programs that are proposed through that, I don't see that coming, but it could. I know SNAP and nutrition is going to be a target in there. How is that fended off? If that becomes very partisan and very brinksmanship, does that erode any bipartisanship for a farm bill? I think that's kind of the biggest challenge outside of the ones I laid out on going too far on climate or, just the general nutrition piece that you mentioned.
Great. Any other questions from the group that is able to join us here on Zoom? Kind of seeing none. I'll do my AFBF talk. Well, Andrew, you are obviously more than welcome to hang out. But again, one more time, I really want to say thanks. It's been a pleasure. I know in my little over a year and a half working with you guys all at AFBF, you're great to support us and then come to our meetings, including the annual meeting and sharing. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time today. And like I told everybody here, we have the slides and you did get Andrew's contact information. So we'll keep a great eye on this. But again, can't say thank you enough for taking the time today. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Appreciate y'all. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, and so switching gears here to the other component that we do here for these town halls is just a little check-in and update from the office. We do not have Amber, who is our policy director, feeling a little under the weather. So a quick update as those who have been getting the Under the Golden Dome and have been checking on those. There's a little slow start to session and things are finally getting moving at this point. The understanding was this week was going to be one of the busier weeks. And so that means things are happening. We at Farm Bureau here in Vermont had a few meetings with a couple of folks related to the Right to Repair Acts that are going on. I'm sure President Tisbert will give us a quick update at his component of that. But we have been watching that. And of course, going forward, we've been able to have time since we last all met in this forum. President Tisbert, Amber, as well as Vice President Mary White and Second Vice President Art Whitman all were able to present in front of House Agriculture and get introduced and kind of share our priorities and all of our work. And the plan is to have that opportunity come up with Senate Ag shortly, now that things are off and going. So just did want to give that quick update. And then Joe, this will be your turn. You can give us your update first.
Well, once again, thank you everyone being on, and Andrew does a great job. He has a lot of statistics. A couple of things that we've been watching in the State House is one, the dairy sponsorship, so to speak, bill that got rushed through House Ag and House Appropriations is now going through the Senate. That's the bill that gives organic farming $5 a hundredweight. A lot of concerns around that that doesn't really help the future of organic. It doesn't build in some infrastructure or industry. Not enough testimony was taken from the testimony from the industry to find out, do we need this fixed just to get through a year and it's all going to be better? We would like more answers to that. And so the Senate, I spoke with the Senate the other day. They had some concerns, and they're gonna address those concerns. Nationally, the USDA upgraded the organic rules to make it more difficult, inspections to be more even and actually enforce them. And they also had some $100 million to give nationally to organic milk, to organic industry. We have been working hard with the Right to Repair bill. Just a little history for those who don't understand this. 3 years ago, as a board member on American Farm Bureau board, we pushed the staff to start looking at how we could affect the right to repair, where the real problems were, how they were done. And in January, we announced an MOU about the right to repair with an agreement with John Deere. And if you look at the bill that is currently going through the legislature, as far as I could see, everything in that bill is covered under the MOU. It's our goal that so that we can work with industry. It's our goal that right to repair bill kind of goes on the wall for a little while, because it looks like over the next few months, the American Farm Bureau will have MOUs with all the major companies. That's what they're working on, so that our farmers have the right to repair to fit their needs. I know the industry has, with workforce struggles and all that, they have really come around. Right now, with John Deere, you can buy the diagnostic equipment, you can buy all the parts, you can buy all the service manuals. We are meeting with them twice a year to make sure that they are following the agreement we made, and that they're not overcharging for the products that we get. So that was a great sign. It was, Farm Bureau works with industry all the time, and it's our goal to make sure that the industry works with us. So it's a great piece. So very kudos to our staff at Farm Bureau, and we look forward to seeing where that goes forward with other groups. Tom and I were on a call with KHIA the other day, and they're actively working on this. Other manufacturers like CAT are also working on this, so we could see some more major agreements in the next few months. So that's an important piece. And we, from a Farm Bureau perspective, we haven't had many farmers come out and say that we have a problem, but nationally there's a lot of farmers that have had a problem. So this is the first step, and we're looking forward to how this is gonna play out. In the State House, I know Amber has been working on accessory on farm businesses, and see how that goes. One of the things in that bill that I think is important to Farm Bureau members, especially if they have farm stores, farm stands with stores and buying other folks' product in, I think it's important that we look at that and make sure that you can bring your neighbor's stuff. You can bring your neighbor's products in when you're short, or if you want to make your stand more viable, you may have to bring more things in. So I think we have to look at that whole bill and see where it's going, but it's something we'll be working on. Had a lot of conversations with some Farm Bureau presidents in the Northeast about PFAS. There's not a good answer for PFAS out there, and Maine has put a bill together that really can't do anything. And so it's something we need to be watching out for and see where the science takes us. PFAS is found in so many things that it'll be really difficult to put a bill together that would be really effective here in Vermont. So we're going to be looking at that bill. So those are kind of the things we've been working on lately. I'm looking forward. I will be going to Washington, D.C. Next Thursday. I am the board liaison to Issues Advisory Committee for Organic and Direct Market. I'm sure I already got some emails from folks looking at the $100 million that got put forward from USDA 2 weeks ago. And they want to have an idea of what those kind of things are going to happen with that. From my understanding, it's $2 a hundredweight across the board So we're it's really interesting stuff that we're going to be working on. There's a lot of marketing issues that we need to look at across the board. We need food safety is another big topic that we'll be discussing. So we'll be 2 full days in Washington discussing issues for organic, and hopefully we'll come out with something that's very productive and will help farmers and ranchers figure out what we're going to be working on. So that I will be, for the next meeting, I will be in Arizona. I have a board meeting for American Farm Bureau in Arizona. Tough to go in March, right? To Arizona, and I'm very excited about it because we'll be spending some time on the border and getting firsthand discussions with farmers and ranchers that have farms on the border. And we'll also see the wall and how folks come in and across the border. And we actually have a meeting that starts at 2:30 a.m. in the morning. So that's when folks start coming across the border for workers. And down in Yuma, they have a path where folks can come across and work and go back in the evening. But there's plenty of other things that we're going to see. Have had a lot of conversations with folks about the border and how volatile it is. So it'll be interesting to see it firsthand and bring that information back to you. Does anybody have any questions for me? Well, it's great to see you all on the call today. I appreciate you all coming in. These town halls have had a lot of reviews after the fact. People watching it on tape after. So hopefully we'll get a lot more conversation going about the Farm Bill. I know that a lot of you out there, I know Paul, you probably have plenty of questions, and Jenny, you guys are you've seen them firsthand on the Farm Bill, especially Jenny down there, to see how it goes. I'm sure will have a lot to do with it this year with Senator Sanders' office. So it's great to have those folks on, and I'll probably leave it back to Tommy.
Great. Thank you again. And just the last person to check in with, I want to also give a big shout out to for the work around the workshops. The first one happened and it was quite a success around the grant writing. So we'll get a little bit on that, and then a quick update, of course, on the field rep spot. So Sydney, glad you're joining us, and it is your turn.
Yay, thank you. So yeah, like Tommy said, the grant writing information session went super well. We had 25 attendees, which was really big and exciting for us. And there were a lot of people who were from outside of Farm Bureau. And I saw a lot of people with our little flyer. So I know that we got the word out and made a really positive impression, which was awesome. I have, if you weren't able to attend and you'd like some information from that event, I can send you the slideshow that was used. So if you're interested, put your, or I'll put my email in the chat and you can send me an email and I will get that to you. Coming up on March 2nd, we have a workshop on-farm stress management, which will be pretty cool. Learning skills to deal with stress on the farm. And then April 6th, we have an agritourism workshop at Silhouette Maple, which is going to be really fun. There's a lot of experts who are going to be there to share information about agritourism with you all. The other things I've been up to, I'm creating some new tabling materials for the upcoming season. Most recently, I created a Young Farmer and Rancher pamphlet. And I've also been sitting in on the committee meetings to report to Amber, our policy director. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thank you again for all the hard work. Eliza, who is our Southern rep, could not join us today either. The big news out of there is had an amazing meeting with our friends at Rutland County. So we want to thank you all for hosting her and for hosting Joe at your meeting. And a lot of positive things came out of that. And then she is working with a group that is, I believe, around 200 people going on a horse trail ride and to work on some equine work. So we're getting a lot more requests on equine related issues. And so we have formed essentially a partnership with the Vermont Horse Council, and we have been invited back to their summit. And we actually have our own 45-minute presentation block to the equine industry here in Vermont. And so we've been, again, trying to work on that policy and having them get some assistance there. So lots of really great things going on. And again, it all stems from members and the work you all do. So first off, thank you all for all the work you've been doing in your counties, your respective areas of the sector of agriculture. And then, of course, as we go forward, I know we plug it every time and it will forever be something we have to say. But when it comes time, we'll be reaching out for folks to testify and speak to our legislators in very direct format, because as strong as a voice as Farm Bureau is, they also like hearing from our members directly. So as much as we can do, we're going to keep doing it. But again, we want to reiterate that we're going to need some help going forward. So be ready. Those calls will come. And I will, again, thank you all for coming. And shortly here, I'll stop the recording, but we'll leave the Zoom open in case there's any additional conversation you want to be had. And then we will reconvene on March 8th. And right now we have Secretary Anson Tebbett scheduled to join us to do a Vermont agricultural update and some other things related to the funding streams that came up were the hot topics that were requested. And then we begin planning out, of course, April, May, and so forth. So again, if there's any topics, things you wish to hear about, or guest speakers you would like us to reach out to, please never hesitate to ask. That is what we are here for. And before we go somewhere, Joe, you have a hand raised.
Yeah, I see Will is Stevens is on the line. I was wondering if you wanted to give us a few words with update from Senator Sanders' office. If he would, or I don't know if he'd thank you actually for joining us. I'm so happy. Seeing you twice in a week is pretty good.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So if you have any updates you'd like to share with us, I'm sure our members would appreciate it. And
yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity, Joe. I don't have a lot of updates. Yeah, I mean, we've got some internal updates. Senator Sanders has just taken on the chairmanship of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. So he's, all in, hammers and tongs, full steam ahead on that. I did lose my ag policy colleague down in DC a couple weeks ago, which is kind of bad news for me, but good news for him. He's moved over to the Senate Agriculture Committee. So we're still in touch, which is great. So now I have a direct line to Senator Stabenow's committee, at least. But it makes it tough for me to kind of work with my DC team on ag policy, but I think we're going to fill that hole pretty soon. So I thought it was a great presentation today. We have held a couple of sessions back in November on the Farm Bill. With Chris's leaving, it's made it a little challenging for me to kind of figure out what going forward listening sessions from our office are going to look like, but I'll keep you in the loop as we develop that strategy for sure. So otherwise, I testified along with the other congressional delegation last week up at House and Senate Ag as well to the legislature. It's fun being back in the State House again. We gave them updates on kind of what we're up to, which was to say not very much because the session really has only just started. So I've already said a lot, but I haven't really said anything. But I look forward to kind of offering more content, as things progress. Thanks for the opportunity, Joe.
You're welcome, and we're here, and I would love to have this ongoing discussion. So keep us in mind when things come up, and we can have a conversation.
Sure will.
Yes, and I will also reiterate that. Thank you, Will. I'm glad you were able to reach out and get you on today. So great. All right. So at this time, I'm just going to